Vault Veritas SCP Files. Episode 52 Writhe.
Niall, this really isn't the time for a report.
One second. I'm just sending a text. It's urgent. Need to do it now. Sorry.
Scott is sick. We're drowning in work. We don't have time for this.
What if I told you Scott will feel much better by the end of this?
Then I would ask how you would know that, and when you became a fortune teller.
I'm just asking you to trust me, Mary. Will you?
I do trust you.
Do you?
Not to intrude, but I'd like to hear your story.
Thank you, Scott.
Well, I'll be over here actually working while you do that.
This one's personal. The reason I left the UK. Sure you don't want to hear it, Mary? You haven't heard this one before.
Alright, fine.
That's the spirit. Incident report 448 probably some ridiculously high number. You know, I never actually made the report officially. This one involves SCP-6448, colloquially known as the Not Deer. Object class Keter. Risk assessment level high. Reported by yours truly, Officer Niall Connors, years and years after the fact. You both remember my time at the interdimensional weather station. Well, not to brag, but after all that ended, I was in a good place. I was well known, the up-and-coming officer who had braved and neutralized a particularly nasty Keter, mastering it with wit and intellect. Naturally, the Foundation started tapping me to solve other significant problems. Other Keters who misbehaved. I had a few other successes, but SCP-6448? To this day, I consider that my biggest failure.
No wonder you've never talked about it before.
Yes, I'm a pompous, self-righteous idiot who doesn't like to admit his mistakes. Especially this one. It's a bit embarrassing. I was so sure I could handle it like I had the others. Find some permanent fix for the problems the Not Deer had been causing.
The Not Deer. Is that like the Not Shark?
The what? Excuse me?
The Not Shark. The absence of shark that Are We Cool Yet created and unleashed upon the world.
Oh. No, not like that at all.
No, these deer are definitely real, visible and tangible. They just aren't deer.
What? They aren't real deer?
They are real, they just aren't deer.
You know, I suddenly feel way less interested in hearing this story.
Tough. I've already started it. Pipe down and it'll become clearer. By the time I showed up at Site 44, the Foundation's cryptozoology division in Essex, England, I had seen a lot of things that shouldn't exist. But nothing ever looks so wrong as the nut deer. The way they lumber, gangly, grotesque, their movements just a second out of sync with reality. The way their abdomens swell, distended like something inside is trying to push its way out. The way their joints bend backwards at angles that should shatter bone. It's like something tried to learn how to be a deer secondhand, picking up the pieces and assembling them almost right, but just off enough to make your skin crawl. When I arrived at Site 44 as a high-ranking officer, a professional consultant on Keter class containment, I thought I was invincible. I'd survived encounters that could, and did, destroy others. I had pulled off the impossible, and I thought, for sure, that I was going to do it again. The others weren't impressed. When I introduced myself, when I explained how I was here to solve their problem, the one that they had been unable to solve on their own, they just rolled their eyes. And me? I convinced myself it was intimidation. They knew I was superior. They knew I was about to blow them out of the water, handling their imitation deer problem with a swiftness and competence they could only dream of. In hindsight, of course, they weren't intimidated. They weren't jealous. They were just tired. But I didn't see that. Because, like I said, I was an arrogant idiot. It didn't take long for me to prove my brilliance. Working tirelessly, I set up a perimeter within the first few days, laid out baited traps, and carefully screened everything that wandered in. Normal deer? Release it. Let it bound back into the wild. Wait for the next one. Deer, release, wait, deer, deer, deer. And then we caught one. We knew it was wrong the moment we laid eyes on it. It stood in the trap on its hind legs, forelimbs crossed at angles that should have shattered its bones. Its eyes were huge, glassy, too forward-facing for a deer, and they locked onto me, staring through me like it could see the back of my skull. And inside those eyes, I could see something moving. Dark, writhing mass, like a worm squirming just beneath the surface. I remember the feeling of intense unease that crept up my spine. I remember shoving it down, swallowing it. I was the man in charge. I wasn't supposed to be afraid. We tranquilized it, dragged it back to containment, and I stood before its reinforced cell, posing like I was expecting paparazzi to pop up out of nowhere to memorialize the moment forever. The others were not impressed. "You do know it won't stay there, right?" One of the researchers, Officer Piers, leaned against a console on the far side of the room, arms crossed, looking both unimpressed and as though he were trying to stay as far away from our new guest as he possibly could. I scoffed, flicking my head in dismissal. What, you think I didn't reinforce containment? That's triple-layered steel. The glass is thermally tempered. That thing isn't going anywhere. They don't get out through the walls, Pierce said, his voice thick with irritation. I ignored him. Big mistake. I should have listened. Should have read the reports more closely instead of assuming human error. I didn't underestimate the anomaly. I underestimated the humans. An error I will not be making again. Because Piers had been right. The knot deer didn't break out through the walls, nor the glass. They dug. The others, out in the wild, had been waiting. As though sharing a hive mind, the 6448 instances coordinated, tunneling towards their captured kin like moles, their hooves stretching, twisting into claw-like shovels that burrowed through the earth. And since this was the third time an instance had been contained, the tunnels were already there, lying in wait, unbeknownst to us. They're intelligent, you see. They knew we would try for one of them again. They were ready. Just 2 days later, the alarm screamed of a breach. I jumped to the cameras, disbelief and shame spreading sharply through my body, and pulled up the live feed from the exterior of the facility. Even as the guards scrambled, I watched as the knot deer emerged from their newest tunnel, expertly concealed beneath a briar patch just feet from the western wall. The first ones crawled out, shaking loose brambles and dirt, their hooves warping and twisting back into shape. Then the one I had so expertly captured followed, staggering forward still on its hind legs, forelegs cracking and snapping horribly as it brushed itself down. I clenched my fists, seething. The others were going to mock me for this. How was I supposed to play the role of the expert now? As my attention returned to the cameras in front of me, I felt my heart skip a beat, and my blood ran cold. The knot deer had all turned. They were staring directly at the camera. The weight of their gazes pressed into me, too real. Like they weren't just pixels on a screen, but here, in the room with me. Some had the glassy, vacant stare of ordinary deer. One had the slit-pupilled eyes of a predator, a fox perhaps, or a wild cat. And the last had human eyes. For a moment, I tried to calm myself. They're just reacting to the camera's presence. They have no idea I'm here. I shifted in my chair, leaning to the left. Their eyes followed. I shifted right. Their gaze did too, sweeping across the camera as though tracking their prey. I shut the feed off. The alarms were still blaring when I crawled into my bunk and yanked the sheets over my head. That was only just the beginning. The knot deer started following me. I don't have proof of that, Mary, Scott. But I felt them. Every time I stepped outside the site's walls, whether I was searching for tunnels in the marshland or tracking local deer herds for signs of infiltration, the weight of their gaze pressed down upon me. I would stop, turn, scan the trees, the waterlogged ground, the distant fields, but I never saw anything. The feeling never faded. That itch of being watched started the moment I left the facility, and didn't let up until I was safely inside again. And when I returned to places I'd previously searched, I found them. Hoof prints, warped and misshapen but clearly ungulate, mirroring my own. They had taken the same twists and turns that I had travelled, step for step. I reported it, of course, photographed the tracks, sent detailed reports to my superiors. They never responded. I couldn't face the other officers at Site 44. Not without tangible progress. Something to prove I was still in control. Peers had not taken my mistake lightly, and rumours of my incompetence began to spread. I heard their scoffs in the hallways, their muttered laughter, saw the eye rolls. When I ordered a guard to patrol a sector or a researcher to analyse a local herd, my instructions were only grudgingly accepted, sometimes outright disregarded. And out in the wilderness, silence. Before, the knot deer had been active. They stalked humans, broke into houses, screamed in the voices of loved ones to lure people into the brush and tear them apart. But now, the attacks stopped, the reports ceased, and they just waited and watched. Months passed. Peers had convinced all others at the site to abandon hope in me, to ignore my requests entirely. But interestingly, as had happened with the weather station, my superiors took note and sent congratulations. No new instances, no new sightings, no new attacks. Clearly, they said, I had done something right. I accepted their praise, quietly this time, for I knew the 6448 instances were still out there, biding their time, waiting, watching. And then, one day, it happened. I was returning from yet another failed hunt, dragging myself through the holes, the weight of unseen eyes pressing against my back. I reached my room, stumbled inside, exhausted, and moved to turn on the lights. I flicked the switch. On, off, on again. No dice. I exhaled sharply, irritation bubbling beneath my fatigue. A blown-out bulb, of course. And with my reputation in ruins, I knew better than to expect a maintenance crew anytime soon. I inhaled to sigh again, and the breath caught in my throat. Deep in the shadows, something gleamed. A pair of glassy, dead eyes. That feeling returned. That deep, gnawing fear I had spent years suppressing. I had survived so much, faced horrors beyond comprehension. So much so that I had nearly forgotten what true terror felt like. But now, it came back with a vengeance. I couldn't move. I couldn't move. The thing stepped forward. Its weight shifted precariously on those spindly hind legs. Its gait an unnatural, dragging imitation of a human's. Its hooves thudded dully against the floor. It walked out of the darkness, creeping into the sliver of watery light spilling through my open door. Thick, tar-like sludge clung to the fur on its face, oozing slowly from the corners of its eyes. That something inside them squirmed, pushing through, writhing just beneath the surface. The same black sludge dripped from its teeth, staining its muzzle. It opened its mouth. Niall. My name, in my voice, distorted, thick, choked with fetid tar-like saliva, but unmistakably me. You see too much. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't angry. It wasn't about to tear me apart. If anything, it sounded almost admiring. It recognized me. I fled. I'm not proud of it, Mary, Scott, of any of this. But I fled. I left everything behind, climbed into one of the site's cars and just drove. I never returned to Site 44. Never wanted to see one of those things again. I even requested a transfer out of the UK altogether. That's how I ended up here in the States. I was done with England. Done with its twisted, grotesque imitations of deer. To this day, I don't know how it got inside the site. Inside my room. I don't know why it sought me out. Why it spoke to me. And I regret it. I regret not answering it. If I had, maybe I wouldn't be stuck with this not knowing. Maybe I would have understood. Maybe it wasn't going to hurt me. Or maybe that was just the start of its process, and I would have ended up just like all the others, torn apart with my blood spattered across the walls. And Piers would have found me and tut-tutted and I told him so. I really thought that had been it. The end of my career at the Foundation. But again, someone had taken note of my movements, had interpreted them as somehow grand and important. I should have been blacklisted, should have been stripped of clearance, tossed into some desk job at best. or fired outright for incompetency in abandoning my post. But instead, my transfer went through. I was reassigned without a hitch. I was not demoted, not even issued a warning, just relocated. It was like Site 44 had never happened. I don't look into 6448 anymore. Never went back. Never checked the reports, the field work, none of it. Tuned it out entirely. You'd be surprised how easy it is to move on if you convince yourself hard enough. Lie to yourself long enough and eventually it sticks. In the end, I learned so many valuable lessons from this debacle. I learned that the Foundation rewards results, not truth. In their eyes, I had stopped the attacks while there. They didn't care how or why, just that it had happened. There were no new attacks, so clearly I had done something right. Why would I argue against that belief and out myself? I learned that the people here hold more power than a title and station does. I had to fight to be heard every step of the way, and nobody wanted to listen. I was too pompous. I didn't read the room right. I was too dismissive. But the people matter. With Piers and the others on my side, maybe things would have played out differently. Maybe I would have seen more than I did. And I learned that sometimes questions are best left unanswered. If I had stayed, if I had asked, it's possible that I would have learned the truth. Or perhaps I would have ended up like all the other victims. I still wonder sometimes. But at least I am alive to still wonder. Some things you're better off leaving behind. No answers, no closure, just distance. And if you're lucky, that's enough.
Just distance.
Well, I'm glad you made it to the States.
Thank you. I am too. There's plenty here to keep me occupied. I have not thought about going back once. Now, how are you feeling?
Oh, I actually feel pretty good. Great, even. That's so odd.
Niall,
Yes, Mary?
a word privately?
Anything for you, my love.
Vault Veritas SCP Files is a podcast inspired by the SCP Foundation. Writhe is based on SCP-6448 by Aussie Lizard from the SCP Wiki located at scpwiki.com/SCP-6448. It is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 3.0 unported license. This episode featured Justin Gellner as Scott Anderson, D.R. Thompson as Niall Connors, and Cody W. as Meriwether Parker. It was written and edited by Leola Angel. We welcome comments. Please rate and review us. Email us at vaultveritas@gmail.com. Join our Discord channel using the link in the episode description. Or for additional content, visit our Patreon. Our Blue Sky is being discontinued. Thanks for listening.